Warframes versus, let's do Star Wars. The next one that I have alphabetically is Baruuk, and yeah, I did do Chroma, but that's because I had footage of Chroma, and in between getting that footage and making this video, I got gifted Baruuk from somebody, one of you, thank you. So I'm skipping around a little bit, but that's just so, you know, I can have footage to show you. Alright, so a regiment of clone troopers with their Jedi general and their apprentice, which would be about 2,000 clone troopers. They're tasked with protecting a small city, small town. How would Baruuk do? His first power is making it so that way bullets just pass right through him, which is definitely awesome. However, that's not too impressive in the whole grand scheme of Warframe things, because every Warframe has good enough reflexes to block bullets with their melee weapon. Like that's an average thing that any Warframe can do. So definitely useful to do that passively, but not terribly impressive for a Warframe. His second power can put people to sleep. Like an entire group around him just goes to sleep even if they're attacking him. That, combined with that first power, is pretty darn useful. And that opens them up for sneak attacks or headshots or whatever else. I'm not really covering what melee weapon and primary weapon and secondary weapon these Warframes have, because that wouldn't really change too much, because a lot of them are overpowered, but I'm just considering the powers. Baruuk's third power is to summon a bunch of tiny daggers that seek out enemy weapons and explode them, dealing a little bit of damage. Usually not enough to drop an enemy, but it is a decent amount of damage. And all of those powers together mean that the clone troopers wouldn't really be able to do too much. They'd have their thermal detonators or whatever grenades they have, and those would be more useful. But I think that the time it takes them to learn that their guns would be absolutely useless would be enough time for Baruuk to do a lot of damage. And then he can just move away from grenades and put them to sleep. I haven't really covered how he would do against the Jedi and their apprentice. I'm assuming just like a generic Jedi Knight. And that's kind of because his fourth power is using his fists, and he magics out an area of effect from his fists. So I personally would imagine that on this battlefield, like that Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars scene with Mace Windu, just absolutely wrecking a bunch of robots, but in this case, clone troopers. And I honestly can't see any generic Jedi Knight that would be able to take care of that. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi, maybe. Mace Windu, maybe. But any random Jedi, not gonna be a good day at all. The Jedi may get lucky and lightsabers can deal a lot of damage. However, every single Warframe has an energy shield, and I think that that would at least deflect a few hits from a lightsaber. And in this case, stopping a few hits would allow Baruuk to get a few hits in. And I think that'd be all they would really need. So I think that just with base, he would clear out the entire regiment of clone troopers plus their Jedi general pretty darn easily. It would just take a few minutes. Maybe like 30 if they're spread out. But again, this is not even getting into the fact that Warframes have a primary, secondary, and melee weapon. And in Baruuk's case, he also has his fists, which you can modify. You can increase the range, increase critical damage, make it have gas damage, make his fists radiation poisoning damage, make them explosions, make them set things on fire. Like, how would you even beat that against other people? Like against Warhammer 40k Space Marines? Their bolter rounds would just be zipping right through him. His fists are able to send enemies that weigh hundreds of pounds with a lot of heavy armor essentially into orbit. He'd be able to crack Ceramite armor easily. Now they would be more of a challenge than a general clone trooper. Obviously, Space Marines are a lot higher on the super soldier scale. And they're also a lot better at melee, but again, they'd still have to deal with Baruuk's fists. I'm actually having a bit of trouble scaling where Warframes would be on the 40k power hierarchy, at least for the Imperium of Man, because they're better than Space Marines. It would be incredibly difficult for Custodies to deal with them, and looking at the Verse Battles wiki, which I don't really 100% use because I don't always agree with that type of power scaling. I generally prefer to look at stuff myself. but they put the Primarchs as lower than where they have the Warframes. I was talking to this one person and they were saying like the chief librarian of the Raven Guard was able to freeze a few enemies in time, and I'm just thinking like, okay, there are like 3 Warframes that can control time in various aspects as some of their basic powers. You're gonna have to provide some better feats. And I personally have a lot of trouble believing that a Warframe could beat a Primarch. So if you've made it this far in the video and you know 40k, then please comment with the most impressive Primarch feats that you can think of. Because there are Warframes that control sound waves, like not they can manipulate sound waves or whatever, they create and control. And Atlas controls Earth, like he's not like an earthbender, he needs to have Earth to move it, he can just summon ground, rocks around him. That's difficult to beat.